Well, hello, lovely listeners. Today I have the wonderful Maris Segal and Ken Ashby. And Ken and Maris are not only engaged, even married. I don't know where that came from. But they are also business partners. They work together. They engage audiences all around the world with their stories, with their powerful insights. There's original music here as well in terms of relationships, because Ken is a singer-songwriter, a man after my own heart. And Ken and Maris are classed as the America's connection couple. They they work together and individually in over 40 countries and have served a massive spectrum of local and global leaders, brands, and policymakers. You've been in boardrooms, you've been in classrooms, you've mentioned here Harvard Kennedy School and the White House. You've talked about the Super Bowl halftimes, which is obviously a huge, big deal. And you've also been featured as TEDx speakers. You've been a part of collaborations of 21 books, I think you said. And you also have now got a solo book called the RFactor, which Ken is now displaying as we speak.
Every
And
time you say it, I'm gonna.
yeah, it's just coming up, right? And it's discovering the universal rhythms for leading prosperous relationships. And we were just talking off camera that two of the core principles here and values are respect and responsibility, which are two of my top 10 core values. So that's really exciting for me. Ken is an international award-winning singer-songwriter, and I can't believe, ladies and gentlemen, we were literally talking before I hit record, and he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "I've spent a lot of time in England, in Surrey, with my producer mate, and we did some songs, and yeah, we did a song for a TV show. You probably won't know it, Living All Right." And I was like, "That's living all right." And anybody that's old enough will know that straight away. Although it took me two goes to get the show, but we'll talk about that maybe a bit later. So they have a drive method, which is desire, relationships, intention, vision, and empowerment. So welcome, Maris and Ken. Remind me, you did say right at the beginning, you're in Virginia. That's right, in America. That's right. Yeah.
We are. That's right.
We are.
That's right.
Williamsburg, Virginia is actually the seat of tremendous American history. So it's actually fun to be here. It's really fun to be in this community.
So it was the first. This was the Williamsburg or Jamestown was the first permanent English settlement in the United States, and that's absolutely undisputed fact. You know
Right.
that. So when the Virginia Company, which came from England, actually I think they sailed out of Holland, but it was a British ship. When they looked at the United States, and the Virginia Company was a shareholder company, one of the first. They looked at Virginia and said, "Okay, Virginia goes all the way from where we are to the West Coast to California."
It was a huge
like
map,
a big
Wow.
V that went all the way from Virginia all the way to the West Coast. And so that was that was the Virginia Company had intent on owning the entire continent practically, because
Nice.
the French were in Canada and the Spanish were in Florida.
Right.
And so anyway, we love Virginia. We
we
love
actually
it.
we moved here from New York. So we actually got to Virginia because Ken and I were hired by the Commonwealth of Virginia, working with an amazing team, the mayor at the time and governors and a number of other folks globally. And the idea was to really bring America's 400th anniversary to light, and the impact and the influence of the Native Americans, the African Americans, and the English. And so Ken and I have a whole history of being the culture connectors. So we're often in a room of, how do we unite diverse populations? How do we bring them together around key issues? And it all centers on respect, responsibility, right?
Yeah.
It all centers on relationships. It's the first thing. So our work has been centered on business leadership and relationships and marketing for over 30 years. And that was how we really came to, one, how we came to Virginia, and two, how we launched our leadership company, was coming out of kind of that era of seeing the issues around people and the challenges.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've probably seen the news, what's apparently happening here the last couple of weeks or so, in terms of the cultural differences. This is how it's all being
Tragic.
this is how it's all being portrayed, but you know, I have my own theory on that one.
Mhm.
Okay, so well, welcome. It's amazing to have you both here, and our listeners and myself. I always love a good backstory, and I always like a good love story as well. So how you guys met, but if you can both talk individually, you know, in terms of your own sort of inner drivers, really, what sort of brought you to what you guys now do, and also as a collective as well. So over to you guys. Welcome.
Well,
Do you want to start or you want me to start?
I'll give a shot. So anyway, there was a big conference, about 5 or 6,000 people in a room, and I walked in the back of the room, and Mara saw me, and that was it. She just fell over. Oh well,
Sorry, you did say you'd written a
maybe
book.
not.
You did say you'd written a book, didn't
Maybe,
you?
maybe not. No, Maris and I were both previously married, and we had been friends for a long time. And after we were both divorced, we ended up meeting each other in a conglomeration of folks, friends and people that we knew. And we had this moment. I thought, I'm sitting next to her in a group of people in a bar, and we're just all talking, visiting. And I said, "Do you want to go out for dinner? Would you like to go out for dinner?" I thought, you know, I hadn't dated in a long time. And so she said, sure, tomorrow night. Great. So I picked her up the next night. We went out to dinner, had a great dinner, came back, let her back off at where she was staying, at the hotel, and went on my way. Found out, and then for a year and a half, we never saw each other again. We were communicating by email.
By the way, we did live in two different cities. I was living in New York City at the
And
time.
I was in Colorado.
He was living in Colorado. So I just want that to be clear.
So for a year and a half, I kept saying, I'm going to be in New York because I'm doing a project there with a group called Words Can Heal. And are you going to be? Well, no, I'm in Hong Kong. So, but you're welcome to stay in my apartment. I was thinking, I'm not looking for a place to stay. So anyway, finally, we did connect after a year and a half. And we had our first date, because I found out on that date that what she thought the dinner was a year and a half ago was just two friends going out for dinner. It wasn't a date. It was a date for me.
Right. Got you.
That's my side. You tell yours.
Well, it's interesting. And I get to start a little bit earlier. I think, you know, like as a kid, I never felt like I belonged. I was always the great connector, the great uniter. There would be new kids at school, and I'd be the one to go up to them and say, okay, what's your name? Where are you from? And one particular instance for me as a kid really was probably the first step in the trajectory of the rest of my life. And when I think about it, I was in, I think it was second or third grade. I can't remember. It had been third or fourth grade. There was a young woman who had just moved there. Her dad was in the military. She was sitting on her own, and this was at a private Hebrew school, so it was very small. It was very small, but she was sitting on her own at lunch, and I walked up to her and started talking to her, and she handed me something in a little packet, which were gummy bears. And so, because her dad had brought them back from Bonn, Germany, where they actually were being made, that's where the gummy bear factory is. And at that point, nobody was eating gummy bears. We were kids and nobody was even seeing those. So I thought this was the coolest thing ever. So she gave me these gummy bears in a little packet. And I said to her, do you have more of these? She said, yes. Why? I said, tomorrow, bring them. So the next day, I walked her around during lunch. I introduced her to people, and we shared the gummy bears, and we talked about where they were from and how cool that was for people and how neat. And all of a sudden we were connected, right? It created this connected and this feeling of belonging. And what I realized in that moment was, I may not feel like I belong, but when I help other people feel like they belong, I get the benefit, right? So all of a sudden there was this opportunity. And the reality is that I spent the rest of my life figuring out ways to belong. It was really tough. And being in service to others was really the best way to do it. Then many years later, I was hired by the '84 Olympic torch relay at 22 to develop the route for the Olympic torch and in Los Angeles. And my tune in that moment as another pinnacle was, we get to unite the country around the Olympics. What does that look like? What's possible? And Ken and I actually met in a global youth leadership organization that uses music and performing arts as for social impact, and it was called Up With People. So we met really with the same commitment of giving and serving and uniting voices. And so that was kind of our kind of heart connect when you think about that. And then, yeah, years later, we were both involved in the organization. Ken was a singer-songwriter for them. Our circle was so opened up globally. It's how we worked in 40 countries. Then having worked on the Olympics and other things, and all along looking at what does it take to create relationships that impact personal lives and brands. And in the end, we realized relationships are the core of everything, the core of everything. When there's a problem and when there's a success, it's all about the people. And that's the core of our business. It's really about the people.
Amazing. So on your first date, which was 18 months later, was that it? It was just a done deal?
No, I wouldn't say it was a done deal, but I think that we met at Maris's Cheers. You know the idea of Cheers, a bar, a hangout where you go at your spot.
The local place
The
to be,
local
right?
pub,
Where I could go alone and
so Maris. So we met there, and she was sitting at the bar, sending out Thanksgiving cards, which I had never in my life. Thanksgiving is certainly our celebration, not yours.
Yeah.
But she was sending out Thanksgiving cards. I'd never seen that to anybody. Anyway, we had a great dinner, and we realized there was a connection, and we realized that, okay, this gets to be explored more. And then we did for the next couple of years. We began to date and see each other from long distance. So much of our relationship in the beginning was on the phone, talking.
Communication was everything. Communication was everything. And what
pre-Zoom.
Yeah. And what was interesting, so you ask a question, which I think is a good one, which is, was that just it? And look, we'd obviously known each other for a long time. My biggest fear, really, just from a vulnerable space, was we're friends and we have a very large cross section of international community.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to screw it up. I was afraid. I really didn't. And so we were together for a while, and then we took a little bit of a break. And what we actually realized was that we had never talked about beforehand how we'd felt about each other, but there was always this sort of interesting connect. And it wasn't until we sat down at that dinner in October and Ken said that he was interested that I said, wow, I didn't know that we had been tuning in the same way over 30 years before. Like, it's just so interesting, right? Yeah. Just that there was this beautiful connection. And what we have learned over the years, because people ask us all the time, okay, wait, you work together 24/7, you live together, you still love each other, and how do you still have a personal life? And it was so funny because even in our TEDx talk, we talked about it, because it just mastering connected relationships is about what we were doing. And what we realized was that what worked for us, we knew there was this flow and this relationship that worked, but we never really navigated the why it worked. Again, type A, I was a little afraid of it. But what we identified was that there were 4 key rhythms, just living life in a rhythm, that when that worked for us, we had great relationships, our business was going great, everything was good in the family. And those 4 key rhythms include 2 of your key values, and that is respect, responsibility, reframing, and resilience.
And where does that come from?
And so that's included in our book as the 4 key R's. And when we realized that these 4 key rhythms were impacting our lives, we sort of set out and said, okay, we're working with 300 celebrities, heads of state, brands, entertainers, Olympians. Wonder if they feel the same about these 4 key rhythms. So we set out on an anecdotal study, basically, and identified. And in the end, what we recognize is that when any one of these 4 are not in sync, when they are not working together at any point during your day, something will go wrong. If you're not respecting yourself first or someone else, if you're not being clear in your communication, if we're not standing up and being accountable or acknowledging gratitude for other people and their work, if we don't see things from another perspective, if we aren't hearing your perspective or we aren't hearing each other's perspective, right? And then if we can't be resilient, then we're just sitting in that space. If we can't seek support and accept support to be resilient, right? So these 4 key rhythms are really what it takes to evolve our personal leadership, our professional leadership, and all of our relationships. And that's the mission we're on.
Yes,
That's really the mission we're on.
So I just invite everybody to look at any relationship, pick one, and say, is there respect there? Do I respect this other individual, whether it's romantic or business or whatever, or even a thing like money, like time? Do I respect it? Do I have respect? Do I recognize my responsibility in this relationship? It's not just the other person's. I have equal responsibility both ways. Am I able to reframe or let go of my limiting beliefs that come not from this relationship, from somewhere in my past? Some limiting belief pops up, and am I able to reframe that and rethink that in a way that's supportive? And then secondly, do I know that rough times are going to come and things are going to happen? We're going to have disagreements, and that's resilience. So our relationships, whether they're business, personal, professional, are all about being in sync with these rhythms, because life is a rhythm. We're walking drum machines. Boom, boom, boom. Our heart's beating all the time. When we walk down the street, we're creating a rhythm. So we are rhythmic from the time we wake up in the morning. And these rhythms get to circulate in our work.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds amazing. I can completely resonate with everything you've just shared. It's all very well saying, these are the 4 rhythms, and if you got them, you're great, you're good to go. But how do people actually implement that? Or, what tools do you give people for them to start to acknowledge when they're not in rhythm and when they are in rhythm?
Well, yes,
I love that question.
Great question. I mean, simply, we do workshops. We train workshops and teach in workshops and coach and that sort of thing. And we always, maybe that's not the exact place we start, but we always get there. And when we talk about, just pick one, respect. You're having a hard time with some relationship, whatever it is, business or professional, personal. So look at it and say, okay, do I have respect for this other, or do they respect me? Do I feel respect? So we just walk through people, giving them tools of how to understand. We have a relational assessment where we walk people through a whole lot of different relationships, and people get to rate it. It's not good or bad or right or wrong, and they get to rate where I am in that particular relationship. And then it's a place to step back and say, oh, okay, well, I noticed that I'm not strong in these areas. How can I do that? And that's what we then continue to work on with tools and techniques.
Each of the 4 rhythms are broken down into key areas of either ways of being, and then from there, we step into the actions we can take to solidify it, right? Here's the thing about respect first. Let's start there. Respect first, it's an inside-out job, right? When we are growing up, we're always taught to respect others, be kind to others. This gets to start inside, love from the inside out. And in businesses, and very often we'll be sitting with teams who don't even, and the leaders of organizations who have not gone that path because they've risen so quickly many in a command and control era, who are now stepping out, recognizing that without the people power in my business, there is no business, period. Doesn't matter what it is. So when you look at the rhythm of respect, we talk about, we show up, we're present. That's the first thing, is, can I remain present? When someone else is talking, am I thinking about something else? Am I really right here? Am I really present? Are we listening? Listening is a verb, right? We may hear, But listening is active. It is a verb. The only way to be in respect with someone else is to really be listening, right? And that's how we build trust. And then we lead with compassion and authenticity. So when you look at respect, you say, okay, here's a great exercise. Today, go home and write down the 5 ways I respect myself. The 5 ways I disrespect myself. It's not a judgment. We actually don't talk about judgment. We talk about being curious, and we replace judgment with curiosity. So when somebody is looking through their respect meter, so to speak, and they say, how am I respecting myself? How am I respecting others? How am I disrespecting myself? How am I disrespecting others? We take people through that. That's a 2-minute. And here are the things we find really quickly. Well, I respect myself in that, oh, actually, I disrespect myself first because I say I'm going to work out 5 days a week and I don't work out 5 days a week. Okay, we asked you how you're respecting yourself. How am I respecting myself? I'm in the gym 2 days a week. So it's not just about what you're not doing. It's about recognizing along the way who you are and who you are being. We tend to come from this place of lack, which is just wrong. So the thing to do is always to start from a place of what is working. And then we ask, what is not working? And then what is in the gap? And how do I shift what's in the gap from what is not working to, but we always start with what's working, right? So when you look at each of these and responsibility the same, we can talk through that one the same. Each of these are tenets that lead up to all the soft skills, all the human skills that we talk about that make the world go. That's what this is really about. And when you look at that and you look at the importance of hard skills are great. But again, without people, those hard skills don't matter because people are what powers your business.
A recent survey from Harvard and a number of other schools recognized that 85% of progress and productivity in our organization comes from soft skills, comes from your skills of personal integrity, respecting others, communication, clear, all those soft skills, which have always been kind of put aside. And that means 15% are from technical skills. Oh, I know how to dissect this. I know how to dig into this accounting situation or whatever the technical part of it may be. But it's that soft skills that provides that underpinning for everything we do. So we love that we get to work on this all the time.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you don't put your soft skills down on your CV, do you? And it's absolutely integral. I've got a burning question. Given the fact that you've dealt with celebrities, you've been in the White House, blah, blah, blah. Responsibility. Now, okay, this is my perspective. It might be a little bit twisted. But a lot of these people, especially people in positions of power and in corporates and all that sort of stuff, they tend, not all of them, but they tend to have more narcissistic traits because that allows them to obviously be this, you know, powerful whatever, and to be able to do what they do. Responsibility, from my own personal experience, isn't something that some narcissists are able to deal with because it's everybody else's fault. So have you come across that quite a lot when you're dealing with these people? Or yeah, you have. They're both nodding. So I'm just wondering how you would deal with that, because
So
yeah.
I'll kick it off here. Responsibility is a really fun topic for us. You probably know this. There are many levels of responsibility. And the first level of responsibility is essentially that I'm not responsible. Nope, I didn't do it. Somebody else, that's it. And we're seeing a lot of that now. We're seeing a lot of that blaming, immediately trying to blame someone else. The second level of responsibility is, okay, I take responsibility. So whenever you hear somebody say, oh, I take responsibility, that means I don't think I'm really responsible,
Yeah.
but I'll do it. I'll take one for the
Take
team.
one for
It's
the team.
it's martyrdom. It
It's
can also
martyrdom.
be can also be manipulative.
And it's
Yeah.
victimization, just like I'm not to blame.
Yeah.
The third level of responsibility is I am responsible. Period. I am responsible. Whatever happens, I am responsible. And the fourth level is, this is a good one. I am responsible for everything. So these levels, as a matter of fact, we lay it out in it like a musical staff. So it's FACE, different levels of responsibility if you read music. So this idea of being responsible, and I am responsible. Now there's levels of we can't control everything. We have control over some things. We have some control over other things. We have absolutely no control over many things. I can't control my shoe size. Can't control the weather. I can control which side of the bed I sleep on. I can control how much coffee I drink during the day. Those are total control. I can have some control over people who I work with in suggesting that we move this direction, but I can't really control whether they buy into that or whether. So there's levels of control. Don't equate responsibility with control, because even the things that we have no control over, we are responsible. In the idea we're responsible for everything, I'm responsible for how I react. If it's raining, if it's sunny, if it's snowing, I have responsibility. So we are all involved in that. So in the rhythm of responsibility, we're integral. We're committed and we communicate clearly, and we stand accountable for our actions.
And one of the things that is really specific, let's go specifically to your question about kind of working with people who are narcissistic or more self-centered. Look,
We're all self-centered in some ways.
The bottom line to all of this is, part of what Ken said is that it's also about how we respond versus react. So while we cannot necessarily, right, we can't be responsible for how somebody else reacts to something, but our ability to respond to it, that's the gift and the choice that we have every day, all the time. That keeps us in the rhythm and knowing that. So yes, we're dealing with narcissistic people. Sometimes we are, but the bottom line to all of this is that we, in our work, whether or not what you're doing as a podcaster and as a coach, other people, presidents and other leaders and all of that, in the end, it's really about intention, right? What is the intention that we are setting forward in? Is our intention command and control, everybody follow me? Then, okay, then if we're choosing to be followers, we get to choose how we're following and how we're trusting. That's our choice, right? And, or if someone is more of the heart-centered, which is really heart-led leaders focusing on the people first, then we know that that's an investment that also pays off. And the best thing for us to do in dealing with a narcissist or anyone else, no matter where they are in their own leadership, is to really understand and meet people where they are, right? Everybody has a different style. Someone who is, we happen to be talking about a narcissist, but some people are also very shy and very uncomfortable, right? So there's kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum. Part of that is understanding, okay, no matter what, whether or not someone is very self-centered and a narcissist, there's still something that matters to them, right? And so understanding that when we are dealing with leaders out there, putting blind trust in faith is one thing. Putting blind trust in people really takes us learning ourselves about what also works for us and what we need, right? And so that trust is built by the evidence, by seeing things work. Okay, if you have an election and it works and people trust it, then people trust. That's the evidence they needed to make that work. In the face of children, and Ken and I have volunteered, tens of thousands of hours over many years. And we were just awarded a Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award for volunteer service from the White House. We looked back at that whole list of organizations. And from a perspective of, wow, I just reliving every moment over so many years was really powerful, really powerful. And why I mention this is because what I also recognized as we were looking at the list, some of the work we've done together, some separately, was what was the experience during that time? How were the relationships working? What was not working? What was challenging us? And the fact is, there were a number of these projects that had leaders who it might have been kind of remarkable to the outside eye that this person was accomplishing what they were accomplishing, because you were like, how is that possible? But the fact is, when there are people surrounding who still believe in the intention and the cause and what's possible, we will get behind anything we see hope and possibilities for. We will. Even if someone is not necessarily the leader we want, we still find hope in the possibilities of humanity. And I think that's a big piece of it. And when we're dealing with our teams and our challenges, it takes clear communication. It takes managing expectations, right? We say expectations without agreement create premeditated resentment, right? Because if we're not clear with people about what we expect and what they expect, then we will never be on the same page. And that's both in a personal life and in the workspace.
Yeah, absolutely. Communication is key, and yet so many of us fall down in so many ways. I picked up on the 100% responsibility for everything. Have you? I'm presuming you know this book, The 5 Personality Patterns, Stephen Kessler. Yeah. So there's a big theme in that, isn't there, about taking full responsibility? Like, our relationships are 100%. It's not 50-50, it's 100%. And as much as we can't always be 100% because we're human beings, but, you know, if we keep bringing ourselves back to that, and taking complete responsibility for everything, that's really challenging. Like, I can do it better than some. However, in the last sort of 12 months or so, I've got 2 relationships where I'm just like, nah. And it's 2 things really. One is a boundary thing. And I think what I've realized personally myself is my boundaries have been translucent for all of my life, right? So I've got to a point now where that is more prominent for me than it ever has been. And in that, it is stopping me doing this total responsibility thing in these relationships. And I've continually been on this pendulum of what's right and what's not, right? And I've had this conversation with my son, with a couple of other people, and I keep coming back to a place of, for right now, this is where I need to be. So I just wondered how you would react or respond to that in terms of this 100% responsibility versus this boundaries versus, you know, stuff that's gone on in the past, et cetera, et cetera. So how would you address that?
Yeah. So responsibility, I am responsible for everything, doesn't mean, as I said before, you can't control everything. You don't have control over everything, but you are responsible for everything.
And for your role in it.
Yes.
Right, for your role in it. So I'm not being clear what you're.
The boundary idea is you establish some boundaries. It's not just good for you, it's good for the other person. The boundaries are good for both parties because it's a clear expectation. This is, Maris mentioned it before, when we don't have alignment with our expectations. So where you go with boundaries is you ask someone, are you aware that these are guidelines, these are boundaries? Do you agree to abide by those? Because if you don't both agree to abide by the boundaries, they're one-sided.
Yeah.
You don't get anywhere. So this expectation, once you have agreement, once we agree on whatever the expectation is, then we can move forward and we can hold each other accountable, and we can be accountable ourselves for when we go outside those expectations or when we don't deliver on those expectations. Does that resonate? Does that sort of, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm also wondering, Mel, so it sounds, we don't have a lot of information from you, but it sounds like you've been in a relationship with someone that in some way wasn't working. I think that's what I'm hearing. And I'm not sure if that's business or personal. And so either way, sort of same goes. The bottom line to boundaries. So we talk about if you're an event producer or you've gone to some sort of a big event, you see the rope and stanchion, right? The rope and stanchion is creating boundaries. Are the boundaries to control access or to keep people out?
I don't know. Rope and stances, what's that?
A rope and stanchion. So in the States, so that's the velvet rope.
What do you call it?
The velvet
rope?
The velvet rope in front of an event. If you're keeping an area blocked off.
What do you call it?
I would call it a velvet rope. I'm sure it's got
a velvet rope.
name.
Okay,
velvet rope.
Okay, a velvet rope. Right. So those velvet ropes are put up for a reason, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, right, so it's controlled access, keeping people out, keeping people kind of contained. And so boundaries are not a bad thing. It's the intention. So I'm going to go back to you and say, okay, what's the intention of where you were in that relationship? What's the intention of where you're sitting now? You've said, this is where I need to be right now. This is where you get to be. You're choosing the place you're in. If you're in a situation with someone now, you're choosing to be in the situation you're in, or you're choosing how to navigate through it. That is a choice you make. You're choosing to be in response or in reaction to it, because we can only, in our full responsibility, we can only be responsible for how we react or respond to someone else and what our role has been in it. We recognize our role, recognize what your role is in it, and not recognizing yourself and the other person from a place of judgment. Do it from a place of curiosity. I wonder, where did that come from? Because what happens in relationships, business, personal, we get triggered, right? And the moment of trigger is never about that moment.
No.
Ken mentioned it before. It's about the legacy of our past, our traumas and dramas and what came before us. So we get to recognize in the relationship, first with ourselves and with these other people, what is coming up for me. And it's really important to face it so that we can navigate through it. And face it is freely acknowledge current emotion. Face it. Because once we face how we're feeling or face a relationship with someone that may be out of sync, then we can actually feel it. So you got to face it to feel it, to acknowledge it. And then from that place, once we feel it and acknowledge it, we can heal it. We can take the steps to heal it. And that comes from clear communications, a solid conversation with someone, not in judgment, but to really be in an open conversation. And if you feel that the boundaries are where you get to be right now, recognize if your ego is playing a role or if it's really your instinct that says, it's okay to take the space right now. That's okay. And you get to trust yourself in that. Does that support?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. Yeah, it's tough when you're in my game and your game, when you are actually a coach, and sometimes you feel like I could be doing better. That those thoughts go through your mind. Am I walking the walk and all of that sort of stuff? But at the same time, you still have to respect what's going on for you internally, and everything happens at the right, in the right moments. And I'm a big believer in the universe as well. It's all in divine timing. It's, what will be without me forcing, pushing, controlling, etc., etc.
Yeah. Well, I think allowing the space is really important. I think one of the things we all learned during the pandemic pause was we gave ourselves permission to allow a space to just breathe.
Yeah.
And we talk about, just taking a breath in the work, taking a breath in that relationship, taking a pause and not feeling shame over it, not judging yourself over it, doing it to be sure you're tuning in to be in connection with yourself first, so that you really understand where and what and how to move forward in that. And
I was
that's
just
really,
going to say,
that's really huge.
when we sing happy birthday to somebody, we sing happy breath day. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to, etc. So we sing happy breath day because what was the first thing we do when we come into the world?
Breathe, yeah.
We
Yeah.
take a breath. And what's the last thing we do? We don't want to think about that too much, but
No.
we take a
Yeah.
breath. So
Yeah.
we sing happy birthday. It's just our own fun way to play
Yeah.
around with that. But yeah, it's the idea that these boundaries are great. Boundaries are good for both sides, as we said. And I was going to say that when I'm writing a song, and maybe you experience this as well, I can control how it comes out of me. I can control how it comes out of me. I have no control over the outcome.
In terms of
You
what
know,
it shapes into, you mean?
yeah, exactly. I mean, I have control how it comes out of me. So if I'm singing, how it comes out of me. If I'm writing, of how it comes out of me. If I'm playing, how it comes out of me. If I'm pitching it, how it comes out of me. After that, I have no control of the outcome. You can't control it. The greatest song in the world could flop because of something totally unrelated to the piece of music, to the creative, to the IP.
Yeah.
So this idea of controlling as how it comes out and letting go of control, thinking you have control over the outcome. That make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as
So
you brought up the music, we'll do just a little sidestep here. So obviously you're a singer-songwriter. I've already said in the intro that you wrote that song that I said in the intro. So how did life start for you, Ken, in terms of the musician and the singer-songwriter? Was that just your sole focus when you were younger, or was it always interspersed with other things?
it started when I was a teenager, maybe a little bit before that. I started, yes, wanting to sing. Singing was the first expression for me. My dad was a Baptist minister in the South, in Kentucky and Tennessee, and so I was in church and the choirs. I was, always in that mode. And then in college, I went in university. I was in a band. We started performing, and then as I went on the road, as Maris said, when I was very young, with this international group that was using music to communicate social awareness and social change, that spoke to me. I thought, wow, I get to communicate what I'm feeling and the joy and the love I feel for being alive, and use music to do it. And so I started writing songs and wrote my first song, and then another one, and then another one, and just you just develop the skill and the love for it as a songwriter. I teach a program now called One Song, because I think everybody has this song inside them. We all have a song inside of us. It's the song inside of us that connects to some style of music that resonates with our beat, with our rhythm, with our internal
Vibrations.
Yeah. And so I help people who've never written a song, and I work with writers who have written all the time. I've co-authored and collaborated on so many songs. So I love
And we
that.
use it as a huge team building,
Yeah.
a great team building, because then people are bringing their vision, their words together in a way they've never worked together before. Now they're feeling energy and collaboration, and all of a sudden a team is communicating in a way they haven't been. So it's been kind of remarkable to see how that's worked.
So everyone says that music is the universal language. You've heard that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Music is the universal language. So where does that come from? Well, it's right there in the word universe. One verse, one song. It's there. It's part of us. It's part of our rhythm. Again, going back to the rhythm. But yeah, I happened to be in England working with a producer friend, great friend, in Surrey, and someone came to us about a TV show and wanted a theme song for a TV show. So we said, we stopped what we were doing and said, okay, fine. So we wrote 5 demos. You know
Can
how
I
demos
just
are.
can I just ask, how did that invite even come? Was it through your producer friend who had these
Yes,
contacts?
yes,
Right. Okay.
yes. He was with EMI for many years and was an independent producer, but with EMI had lots of connections in the industry. Produced Cliff Richard, produced a bunch of big artists in England. So he was connected there. And so I didn't know these folks. So we set out, and turns out one that he scribbled something on a napkin. I went off in the studio and played with it for a little bit and came back, and that was the one of the 5 that actually won the British or the Ivor Novello, and it was a number 2 just below Pipes of Peace, Paul McCartney
Oh wow,
in
right.
UK and all over UK. But the interesting thing is, come back to the US, the TV show Alvita's and Pet never made it to the US
Oh, what a shame.
because I think the dialects and
The
the
dialects, yeah,
was
yeah,
so heavy.
yeah.
If you weren't from there, you wouldn't understand it. So it never made it here. So none of my friends, nobody ever knows about it. You know, so it's just whatever. But I'm so proud of it. And
Well, as we said, as I said before we came on, I used to watch it every Friday with my dad and my brother. I think at the time my mum was doing part-time work in a pub somewhere, and he used to give us. There was this horrible lager called Norseman. I was only about 13, 14, I think, and so me and my brother used to share half a
so
can
was
of.
I. So was I. I was
Yeah,
13 or 14
yeah.
too. Yeah.
So we used to share this can of Norseman lager and have a Mars bar. I don't know if you know what a Mars bar is, but it's quite a chunky
Yes.
chocolate bar. And just sit and laugh at Arvida's Own Pet. And then years later, a boyfriend bought me the actual box set of it all, and I sat and watched it all again. And it was as good then, even better because I was older and could understand it more as well. But my dad absolutely loved it. He was pissing himself all the way through it because, as I said to you, he was a bricklayer himself. So that whole, humor between tradesmen and builders and all of that was right up his street. So yeah, I love that. I just, yeah, I'm in
I
awe.
had an experience when I first saw
Who
it. I
sung
had
on
an
it?
experience.
Sorry,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
who sung on it? Was it you or somebody
No,
else?
a man named Joe Fagan.
That's it, Joe Fagan. I remember
Joe
that name.
Fagan,
Yeah.
who,
And,
God rest him, he recently passed away. I was there for his funeral.
Oh wow.
Uh,
and you did
and
sing on it.
I
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
sang on
you
it.
did sing on
I'm
it.
singing on the
Yeah.
chorus.
Cool.
That's living all
All
right.
right. Yeah.
It's a good beer drinking song, you know.
Yeah.
But was just a great. It was selected to be you probably aren't aware of this, but back in those days there were something called 45s.
Yeah.
So it was the B side, which was the A side was supposed to be the big song. That was the opening song, and ours was the B side, which was the trailer, or the end of the show every time. And again, you can't control the outcome. Who knew that it was the B side that would become the big hit?
Well, and even years ago, it's funny because even a number of years ago, I don't remember how we found out that it had this resurgence for whatever reason, and people were now again singing it in football arenas. And we had heard from a friend, and this is like 10 years ago or something. We'd heard from a friend that said, do you guys know that this song has had a resurgence in every football game? We're now singing it, and we couldn't believe it. How many years later?
Yeah.
So these are things you don't know, and you sort of, but again, let's bring it back to relationships, right? That you specifically said, now, how did that invite happen? We are where we are when we're meant to be. You said that before earlier.
Yeah.
We are where we are when we're meant to be. We know that we're in relationships with someone or something 24/7. We can't avoid them. So when we look at our relationships, and I bring this forward because how did that happen? That happened because in relationship with a friend opened the door to an opportunity. Saying yes was not assumed, right? So when we see a moment, it's about Do we say yes? Do we say no to that moment? And then it's about creating the relationship with the music. Then it's about down the road, Avita's Zane Pet. Who knew side B, That's Living All Right, was going to be? Because it connected with people to feel something. And in the end, we're the one relationship we can't leave home without. And when we have an opportunity to help someone feel something positive, gratitude, kindness, a recognition, even when things are crazy, in our toughest moments, to look at those moments and say, I am so grateful for what I gained from this moment, to be able to do that. And so the relationships in the end with ourselves, with others, with that's where it starts. That and mastering the connection to be able to move that forward.
Yeah,
and
the relationship I had with great producer David Mackay is his name, who's produced so many major hit records. And we had this long-standing, over years of a relationship. So it started there for me. I had a relationship with him. So we could easily go from one thing to another and snap right into, okay, well, let's stop everything and let's just write these demos. And then he had relationships with the person who made the ask. He had a relationship with Joe Fagan. He had a relationship with the recording company, with the record label. It's all relationships. Every song you ever hear, every movie you watch, every book you read, what are they written about?
People.
relationships
A relationship.
in some way.
Some
Yeah.
part of a relationship. And so I'm so grateful and thankful and will always be for my relationship with David Mackay and that being present at that moment.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
boom. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And while you were talking, Maris, I was thinking it just as you said the same thing about the chaos and confusion and all of this. I've had a shit week this week. And the timing of this podcast, because I was a bit late, I was quite late coming back to you guys, and blah, 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 and then you put it in for today. Just sitting here remembering my dad, is just perfect for the week I've had.
I'm so well, let's just hold that space for you for a minute. And I'm grateful for that. And just hold that space right now. And you get to be in that. And I will tell you that this has probably been the toughest year for Ken and I. This has been the toughest year for lots of reasons. We've had some family things going on that have been, very tough, that we've had some choices to make. And I think, being one with those choices, and I think over the years, my growth especially, has come from allowing vulnerability, allowing it. I spent my life being the strong one in the room. Ask Maris, she'll handle it. Oh, yeah, Maris will handle that. Yeah, Maris will handle that. And you know what? I finally just blew up. I finally just, was really exhausted.
Yeah.
And we get to that point of knowing that my heart, my intention is so pure. And sometimes we get to just stop, take a breath, and be in recognition and own it and feel it and acknowledge it and be able to just navigate through it, not from a place of anything but curiosity, and allow ourselves a place of gratitude and grace. And good for you for standing up in your resilience to continuously do your work, do your podcast. That takes courage. That's not an assumption. That takes courage. And so we honor you for being in that, because I understand that, and so we're with you, and thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. So in terms of, I've just noticed the time. Tell us about your book, Ken. Come on.
The RFactor.
The RFactor.
Yeah.
What does somebody expect from reading that? What are they going to get by the end of it? Or you hope?
Let me just jump in here quickly. That the RFactor is a story. It's a parable. It's a story about two people, and one of them happens to be a huge concert event producer worldwide, globally.
Single mom.
Single mom. and the other one happens to be a stockbroker who is also a singer-songwriter. I wonder where all those references came from. So it's not about us, but it is, and the whole idea of relationships and the RFactor is not about us, but the idea of the story is it's about, but it does embody many things that we've experienced.
So it really navigates through, they find their life, they meet each other, they find their lives in some way or another are out of sync. And they actually start to identify and meet up with these 4 key relationship rhythms in various parts of their lives. And what they're realizing is that things are really shifting and moving. So it's kind of they're building friendship. And we did it in this way because we're not the how-to kind of people. That's not our nature. Our nature is, you know what? We've been in this mess. We're just sharing our story in another way so that we can get people to really be in their own story in this. And it's a quick read. It's about a 4-hour read. We have it now being read in leadership classes. So it's really kind of the idea of just something fun that has the leadership nuggets, leadership classes, high school classes. We've just been asked to actually deliver to the business educators, which is interesting because they're really teaching business in schools. So they've asked us to come and speak. And it's great because that's how we're seeing the potential for the book is our goal is to get it into millions of people's hands so that the culture in business, that the culture in personal lives, that the culture in communities can shift from this, I have to be right, I have to have it all, I have to, it all has to be perfect, to really creating a navigation and investing in the human capacity, in the human currency. And that's really our mission, is evolving leadership and evolving relationships on this planet one at a time. So what does it take this week to go back into your business, to go back into your family and up-level one relationship at a time? What does it take? Is it speaking to someone differently? Is it hearing them from another perspective? Is it offering them an opportunity to know how grateful you are for their work, right? What does it look like? It's not difficult. One step, one commitment, one intention. And that's really what it takes to start the ball moving forward, to shift a culture.
Amazing. I love the fact that you've done it as a story between 2 people. So I will be getting that. I mean, I love self-development stuff anyway, but I love, I love a good love story as well.
Good.
So, okay. So you mentioned actually at the beginning something that you wanted to share. Have you got, what was it you were talking about?
Well, yeah, we have something called, we are very, feel like gratitude is a huge aspect. Gratitude is the melody for life, basically. And that when we have gratitude, it opens up so many other doors. It opens up so many pieces. So we've created something called the Gratitude Practice. And it's a guide, it's a gratitude practice guide. And if people will communicate with us at segalleadershipglobal.com, we'll send you there's a spot on there on our website just to ask for the gratitude practice guide, and we'll be happy to send it to you for free.
Okay. I'll download that as well. Funnily enough, me and my son were talking about gratitude last night. He's been struggling for just over 12 months. Well, it's been longer than that, let's be honest, but anxiety, panic attacks and all the rest of it. And so we were talking last night about what he's grateful for and all of that. So yeah, I'll go and have a look at that. And I'll obviously put that in the show notes because we've all heard about gratitude this, gratitude that, do a gratitude journal. And yeah, I should be writing 3 things down a night or whatever. And doing it and saying it and doing it are 2 very different things. So yeah.
Well, and the thing here's the thing about gratitude. And look, again, we're on this podcast not because we're the be all end all. We are like any other member who is listening to this podcast right now. We are you. It happens that we've been through what we've been through. We've been able to frame it and build it and create something that supports people where we have all been experiencing some of these issues. When you look at gratitude, even when things are crappy, it's being able to stare the obstacle in the face and saying, I'm going to navigate through this. I have what I need inside of me, or I can go seek support. Gratitude is currency, and it starts first. All of this starts first with being grateful for who you are. Sometimes waking up in the morning, you may not feel gratitude in that moment. If you ground yourself, though, in, I am grateful for waking up today. I am grateful for the person laying next to me. And if you're on your own, you do this practice in the mirror. If you have spouses, if you have teams, if you have kids, you do it with your kids also. And it's something that just grounds, and it's not a required, it's just what feels grateful to you. It's very simple, right? Yeah. And so the truth is that when we start to embody a feeling of gratitude, everything shifts. Everything shifts. And you know, there are no requirements to it. It's just we get to really be in connection with ourselves around what gratitude feels like. Yeah. And acknowledge ourselves in that first.
And take little practice gratitude as you go through your day. Just saying thank you to someone. Thank you to the teller at the bank. Thank you to the person who's checking you out at the store, at the grocery. Just saying thank you. Thank you. I really like that. I noticed how quick you were on the keys. It means the world to people. Yeah. Just a little recognition. We all want recognition. We all, because there are 7 words that we all want to hear. Yes, I hear you. I love you. We all want to hear those words all the time, everywhere we are. So anytime somebody shares a little gratitude with us, we get to keep sharing it and keep finding ways. Look for opportunities to share your gratitude. Just look. There are many, many, many.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Is there anywhere, you mentioned that website for the gratitude freebie. Is there anywhere else if people were interested to learn more about you that you would send them to? And obviously I can listen.
Yeah, they can also, yes, we're also on Instagram. It's the RFactor _ RFactor. And yes, so we actually have, you know, often we put tips and tools and things like that. We've been a little less active lately. We'll be more active actually. But yes, there. And then also you can send us a direct email. Once you ask for the gratitude practice guide, you can put an email in there. In fact, we just had someone ask us for our speaker sheet, and they're hiring us to be a speaker. So you never know, but that's an easy way to communicate with us anytime.
Amazing.
Definitely.
Well, I've really enjoyed this in terms of your perspective and what you're bringing out into the world, and obviously the Auf Wiedersehen pet story as well, and just your own story. I always like to finish these conversations with anything you feel called to share, whether it be a favorite quote or whether it's pearls of wisdom. What would you like to say towards the end?
So I will leave you mine, and that is, we are all connected as humanity first. And the bottom line begins with relationships. Choose all day how you're going to show up for yourself first and then for others. So that's mine.
Thank you.
You want to leave with gratitude string?
I don't know. What about a little song?
Yeah. Go. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll leave you. We'll leave you with Gratitude Street, and then we'll hop off with that.
So
is this like Sesame?
You know how Zoom is, so I hope that. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Can you hear the guitar? So this is a song that just at the end of the pandemic, we were headed to New York, and I was so happy that I was going to be seeing some friends, and it just in the taxi between Newark Airport and New York City, I wrote this song. And then when I got back to the apartment, I got my guitar out, and, you know, but it's called Gratitude Street, and putting yourself on Gratitude Street could be anywhere. So I'll just do a little bit of it.
Okay.
Shuffling down the sidewalk, I'm not worried about the clock. The bodega's busy, the deli's packed. It's like a party on every block. I got a pocket full of feel good, singing with the one-man band, seeing smiles, hellos, open doors, and lovers holding hands. Down on the corner, somebody's dancing to the beat. I'm so glad to be walking on Gratitude Street. Glad to be walking on Gratitude Street. I'm glad to be walking on Gratitude Street with you.
Ah, love that. Love that. Couldn't really hear the guitar too much, but got the nice harmonies and got the nice vocals in. So that's amazing. Thank you.
Thank
Oh,
you for that, and thank you for the feedback. I'll work on getting the guitar less.
And more
prominent.
importantly, really, thank you for what you're doing, for the
Yes.
platform you're providing, and for the visibility you're providing, and for the support you're providing. What we're sharing today is not about us, it's about what we're all going through, right? And that's what you've created here as well, is exactly that, is an opportunity for people to come and feel safe, and for people to come and be heard, and for people to come and be nourished. So we really honor you and the work you're doing, and thank you for including us.
And I would say that Never Settle podcast, I thought about it.
Love it.
And think about when something settles, it goes to the bottom. And what you're saying is keep yourself floating, keep yourself buoyant, keep yourself swimming, keep yourself moving and active. And I just love it. And again, thank you so much for your vulnerability, and thank you for just being who you are. And we look forward to meeting you in London or US, wherever it is.
I'd love that. I'd love that. I was just thinking when you said Newark Airport, because I've got family in Poughkeepsie. Yeah, so I've had Thanksgiving in Poughkeepsie. That was 2019. And I've also got family in San Francisco, well, just outside San Francisco as well. So
Oh, I love it.
yeah,
Love it.
yeah.
Awesome.
I love it. Mel,
Right,
thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you both on. And
Thank you.
I reckon I'm going to have you back on, because there was stuff that I didn't get to ask you. So, right.
Anytime.
We would love it.
Nice one.
We would love it.
Thank you.